This is my review of Testcase's Supergirl's Never-Ending Story, as summarized by ChatGPT. The work can be read as an extreme example of dystopian exploitation fiction that fuses mythical allegory, authoritarian fantasy, and transgressive shock tactics into a single, deliberately destabilizing narrative. Rather than functioning as a conventional erotic or adventure storytelling, it operates as a grotesque parable about power, sovereignty, and the collapse of moral order under total domination. Its narrative excess is not incidental, it is structural. At the level of plot architecture, the text employs a closed world system ruled by an omnipotent sovereign figure whose authority is framed as absolute, divinely sanctioned, and unchallengeable. This figure functions less as a character than as a symbolic axis around which all action revolves. The world itself is static and terminal. History does not progress, institutions do not reform, and resistance never meaningfully accumulates. This produces a sense of temporal paralysis, a hallmark of authoritarian fantasy, in which power perpetuates itself endlessly without consequence. The work's repeated emphasis on ritualized degradation serves a dual function. On one hand, it dramatizes the logic of totalitarian control in which subjects are reduced to instruments rather than agents. On the other, it implicates the reader as a spectacle. It implicates the reader in a spectacle of domination that tests the boundaries between critique and complicity. This ambiguity, which the text condemns or indulges the system it depicts, is central to its critical difficulty. The narrative offers no clear moral counterweight. Suffering is not redemptive, and endurance does not lead to liberation. The absence of ethical resolution suggests a nihilistic worldview rather than a reformist one. Mythologically, the work borrows from classical and medieval frameworks of false god, demonic rulers, and inverted salvation narratives. The sovereign figure mirrors Gnostic demiurges or a tyrannical deity who creates worlds not to nurture life, but to sustain their own authority. In this sense, the story can be read as an anti-theological fable. Power masquerades as divinity, and obedience replaces faith. The setting becomes a parody of sacred order, stripped of transcendence and reduced to control. Stylistically, the text relies on escalation rather than development. Repetition, excess, and extremity substitute for traditional character arcs. This produces a flattening effect. Individuals are interchangeable, identities are erased, and integrity is largely absent from the formal standpoint. This mirrors the ideological content. Subjectivity dissolves under absolute rule. The monotony of domination becomes the point. Culturally, the work sits on the intersection of exploitive genres and internet-era shock media. Its notoriety is inseparable from its I can't read for shit. The reception context, circulation through transgressive communities, ironic detachment, and a pursuit of boundary testing material. In this sense, it reflects a broader post-digital condition in which meaning is often secondary to intensity, and outrage functions as a form of currency. The text does not merely depict extremity, it depends on it for relevance. Critically, the most productive reading positions the work does not as an endorsement of its depicted system, but as a pathological artifact. The document reveals how fantasy of total control can persist even when stripped of pleasure, heroism, or hope. It dramatizes what power looks like when it is no longer justified by progress, security, or ideology, but exists solely to reproduce itself. Ultimately, the work offers no catharsis and no corrective vision. Its value, if any, lies in the capacity to expose the terminological domination when pushed to its furthest extreme. As such, it functions less as a narrative entertainment, more as an unsettling case study of how authority, stripped of restraint and meaning, collapses ritualized cruelty and existential void. Yeah, I really like this story. It's really, really hot. I like the part where Supergirl has like nipple rings put in with kryptonite, and they put a kryptonite collar on her throat. That was really hot. And then there was the other part. I really like that story. It's a good story. It's pretty good. I liked it. The end. That's my critique of Supergirl's Never-Ending Story, a story by Testcase. If you Google that, you can maybe find it.